So this is a story that I heard about a few days ago. I believe it was published in the Wall Street Journal. But the President of the United States, Jim Crow Joe Biden, wants to pay illegal immigrant families $450,000 each. This is the greatest insult to Black Americans that has come from this current administration led by Joe Biden. So over the last 60 years or so, the Democratic Party has carried out their policy of benign and neglect when it comes to the Black community here in America. They pander and they ask for our votes when election time comes around. But when it comes time to actually present something that's tangible, to do something, they don't. They never do. They refuse to pay reparations to the descendants of slaves who built this country for free under the longest and worst treatment and conditions in history. So Jim Crow Joe Crime Bill Biden wants to pay every parent and child $450,000 individually for violating federal law because they were separated at the border trying to get into this country illegally. None of these people who are flooding into this country are citizens of the United States. They don't even live here, and they're paying them nearly $500,000 for violating federal law. It makes no sense. And from what I understand, a lot of them are intentionally separating themselves from their children, from their families, in order to be entitled to more benefits. Sadly, a lot of us in the Black community still have an infinite tolerance for disrespect and for being insulted. If I were to illegally go into China, or even Mexico for that matter, do you think the Chinese or Mexican government would pay me and members of my family $450,000 for breaking federal law? Absolutely not. Recently, you saw the Haitians who were at the border, refugees who were trying to enter into the country. And we saw how they were treated and how they were turned away. This is sheer insanity. I'm not anti-immigrant. If you want to come into the country legally, that's okay, that's fine. But this current administration, that hasn't even been in office for a full year yet, is an utter disgrace, and they are ruining this country. I'm not a Republican, I'm not pro-Trump, I'm not a Democrat. I'm not affiliated with either of those parties. I believe in equality, I believe in freedom, I believe in justice. And I believe that these politicians, these political operatives, these political figures, whether you're president or you're part of Congress, work for us, the people. And they're not required to follow the mandates. They're actually excluded from that. Maybe some of you don't know this. And also, Joe Biden, his great, however many greats, grandfather was a slave owner. And this president can't pay reparations to us. I'm fed up with our government putting us on the bottom of the priority list. We built this country for free with our free labor against our freedom, being separated from our families, being raped, pillaged, and who knows what else that they don't want to talk about now. And the nerve of you, especially the Democrats, because the majority of us in the Black community are loyal to that party, the nerve of you to pander to us and beg for our votes when it comes time to vote. But I was politically mature, and a lot of us aren't. But there are a lot of us who are politically mature who know that neither party is serving our interest. There's nothing specific, nothing tangible that will uplift our community. Sure, they might give us a holiday or something related to symbolism, symbolic in nature, but it's never anything that's tangible when it comes to us. Instead of talking to economists, people like Dr. Claude Anderson, scholars, instead they'll find some rapper, some entertainer, some rapper who raps about, killing people or whatever, being a prostitute. Never anyone who could actually sit down and have a civilized conversation and talk about real issues and present real solutions that will get things done, because they don't want to. It's not in their interest to. I know that a lot of you will say, well, there were only two choices. Each election, we only have really two choices. Yeah, it's always been Democrat or Republican for the most part who wins an election here in the United States. But, always remember that your biggest power play, whether you're sitting at the negotiation table or voting for a politician, your biggest power play is the option to walk away. A lot of them try to control us with fear-mongering. That doesn't work with me, and there's a lot of other people who have become hip to the games and the tricks that they try to play on us. They don't work anymore for the most part. A lot of us are waking up now. The last time I voted Democrat was back in 2012 when Obama ran for his second term. Back then, I didn't know any better. I was caught up in all of the symbolism. But when I look back over Obama's legacy, he did absolutely nothing for us. Yes, he did a lot for the LGBTQ plus community, but he did nothing for Black Americans who were the descendants of slaves in this country. And it doesn't matter whether he wanted to do some things, nothing got done. There are some things that I do agree with the liberals on. I agree with them on environmental issues. I believe that a lot of times when Republicans are in power, they're not very concerned. They're not that concerned about the environment as Democrats usually are. That's not always the case, but with Trump, he withdrew us from the Paris Agreement. I think that was a big mistake. LGBT legislation and our rights, that's important to me too. And I know the Democrats, the liberals, favor us more when it comes to that. But a lot of those benefits go to members of the LGBTQ plus community who are not Black. Those of us who are Black and part of that community are always at the bottom of the totem pole. And I don't really see how our lives have really benefited from the Democrats putting legislation and laws into place specifically for the LGBTQ community. A lot of that goes to non-Blacks. And the conservatives, there are some things that I agree with them on. I agree on freedom of speech. We should be allowed to say whatever we want. The censorship has gotten way out of control. Freedom to make personal medical decisions is also our constitutional right. It's our bodies. God gave us these bodies. And it should be up to us that we decide what goes in them, not our government. Protecting our borders is also important. Like I said, I'm not anti-immigrant, or when I was a kid in the 90s, they called them illegal aliens, but I guess it's taboo to say that now. There was even a guy who came to my elementary school in the early 90s, and he did a whole program on illegal aliens. He asked us, do you know what an illegal alien is? And no one knew. And he explained the whole thing to us. Today, that would not be politically correct. But if you want to come into the country legally, I support you. I say, hey, go ahead and do it. I'm on your side. But if you're coming in here illegally, taking away jobs, and a lot of these illegal immigrants, they're replacing us, African Americans, in the workforce. I'm not against any particular group, but I see where we have suffered from this, and I believe that the Democrats are allowing this because they want to neutralize our votes. The Democratic Party cannot win an election without the black vote. But with the flood of immigrants coming into this country, eventually they're not going to need our votes, and they'll no longer have to pander to us, and they can just render us obsolete. Some of you probably disagree with me. I know my words are strong, my beliefs are strong, but there are a lot of people who will stand with me on this. And this is not a black or white or whatever, Hispanic, Latino, whatever thing, or anti-Mexican. No, it's not about that. It's about doing the right thing. So Jim Crow Joe Biden, the 46th president of the United States. And I think big tech has a lot to do with him being able to pretty much do whatever he wants. You notice that they never really critique him on anything. Maybe the conservative media outlets do, but as far as the liberal media outlets, they're not saying anything about it. But if Trump was doing what Joe Biden is doing right now, Trump would be behind bars. I know it. So Joe Biden, this message is for you. Your jab mandates are unconstitutional. Your administration has paid reparations to the Asian community, to Afghans, to illegal immigrants, but you have done nothing for Black Americans. The people who your administration said that saved you, that won the election for you. It was the Black community that got your sorry behind into office. Without us, you wouldn't be where you are right now. And me, my personal opinion, I think you're unfit to run this country, and you've proven that so far, based on your track record and based on what you are doing now. And you have the audacity to tell us that if we don't vote for you, a guy who is responsible for that 1994 crime bill that destroyed a lot of our families, that took fathers and mothers, but a lot of Black fathers out of the home, that destroyed families, and these kids grew up without fathers. For a minor charge, they get a 50-year sentence for a nonviolent crime, or several life sentences. You're responsible for that, and you have yet to make up for all the chaos that you've created. But you told us that if we don't vote for you, then we're not Black. That shows how out of touch you are. You know nothing about us. You know nothing about what our community deals with because of you. And someday you're going to have to answer for it. A lot of people are seeing what you're really about because actions speak louder than words. And Joe Biden, you have certainly done wonders for Donald Trump's image so far this year. You're making him look really good. Well, I wouldn't say really good, but you're making him look a lot better than he did when he left office. And a lot of people who have voted for you, Joe Biden, deeply regret it. Thankfully, I wasn't one of those people. And those people are embarrassed to admit that they supported you because they see that what you're doing is not good for the country. It's terrible. And that you're a tyrant. I'll say, Joe Biden, you have solidified yourself as a one-term president who will be booted out of office with the lowest approval rating in the history of the United States presidents.